doing?
He was just talking about us getting engaged
Oh.
and talking about being married. But all that time he was telling you how I liked the other boys better, and that was never truth. I still always liked him the best.
But she was looking.
I want to make sure.
If there'd have been a better one come along, I would have been out of the picture.
And this is the thing I had in my mind ever since I was a little girl, that I was looking for a dark complected guy just like he looked like.
Just like I look now.
No, down there on the picture. And so I sometimes think it was set up in heaven, because that's what I was looking for. And I remember him too. He said he wanted to go with a blonde girl. He wanted a blonde wife too.
Yeah, I think I said that.
But I want to tell you one other thing. I was looking for a good man, even when I was just a kid. He had to be a guy who could work. That was really important to me. And I noticed that even the friends, all the other friends, they never did work much. And when we went on dates with our friends, he always had to bring the car. Other kids never had anything, and I just noticed that. He was the one that was working. And I really thought a lot about that this guy knew how to work. And so when we got married, we didn't have anything, but I always feel like he'd take care of us. And he did, and he has even till now. And his whole time, I think I had a good idea of doing that, because as far as money goes or whatever, he was always able to take care of the family and worked hard, and that was a good idea. And I think sometimes young girls should look for somebody who knows how to work and make a living. Well, first we got married in the Salt Lake Temple, and we had a reception down in American Fork, and we rented a little house in American Fork. It was only a 3-room house, and it cost us $22 a month for rent. And it was a good deal in those days. There wasn't any places to rent anyway. And from that little place, I still worked at the telephone office, because I could walk from work to work a lot. And he started working for other places. And
Your dad got me a job. I couldn't find any jobs. It was hard to find work. And her dad worked for Utah Power and Light. And there used to be a power plant at the mouth of American Fork Canyon that generated electricity, and there used to be a pipeline come down the mountain way up high up there. The water come down and went down and kept the power plant running, and that pipe was slipping down the mountain, and they needed to put a retainer, a big chunk of cement up there on the mountain to hold it from slipping down the mountain. And of course, he off and on worked for him all the time, and so he wanted to know if I wanted to come up and work there. So that was my first job. Went up, and he had horses, and he packed the stuff up on the mountain on his horses, and I worked up there with another group of guys from Alpine. That was my first job.
And I remember saying just before we was married to my mother, can 2 people live on $39 a week?
35.
$35 a week, and she said, no, they cannot, because that's how much I earned. I said, well, we're going to do it. And so we got married anyway. And the greatest thing that happened is next time was probably our children. Our little girl, Marilee, was born with such joy for us and every single one of the children. We was talking the other night, when's the most spiritual things that happened in our life? Do you know what it was? The birth of each child. That's when it was the most spiritual and most wonderful. And
I agree with that. That was a special time. That first baby was absolutely a miracle. I couldn't believe it. What we'd created. What a blessing.
And then, let's see, we lived in that little house for not very long, and when
A couple of years, wasn't it?
yeah, and when we was gonna get married, he said, when we get married, and I'll have a house for you in 3 years. And I thought, what a big story. And he said, I won't borrow money either for it. And I thought, did not believe that he could do it, because I always thought you had to borrow money to have anything like that, you know. But we did move into our first house in about 3 years. We was married, wasn't it?
There's 2 years.
You was building in 2. Yeah, because
We
Jeff
saved.
wasn't.
I remember we saved our money, and I finally got a job working for Rasmussen Heating, and they're still around. And I got a job working for them, and they paid me $1 an hour. But I worked a lot of hours. I could work a lot of hours, and we saved money, and we saved enough money to buy a building lot.
In just a few months, we had $800 building
It was
lot.
$800 for a building lot, and we saved enough money to buy a building lot. And we continued to save money. Finally, I don't remember how much we got saved, but enough that we thought we could start building a house. So I started building a house. Never built a house in my life, but I did.
And this little house, every day he'd get his paycheck. I would take it down to the lumber yard, and they got almost all of our paycheck every week. I don't know what we ever lived on. And they let us have material to build a house to do that way. Finally, we got it almost up, wasn't it?
Well, we got up in the roof on it, and it needed to be finished inside, and I think we ran out of money.
And we was going to have another baby, and we wanted to get in it. So he went and asked the banker, who was his home teaching partner, if they'd lend us enough money to finish the house. And he said it wasn't a good risk.
He wouldn't do it.
And so he went and asked his parents, because he knew they had money in the bank. They were very careful with their money, and they lent us $2,900. And we finished the house, and we paid for it. It took 6 years to pay them back. And when they charged us interest, the going rate of interest and everything.
We paid him 4% interest. 4% interest.
That's what it was then.
And I think about $50
A month.
plus interest, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
We always made sure we had $50 on the principal. Then we'd add the interest on every time. And I think I even still
Never
have.
went in debt for another house.
Wow.
That was the only one.
That's pretty amazing.
So you had the house finished before your son had a baby?
We had the upstairs all, and we didn't have the steps on it and stuff for outside. But yeah, we had enough, because we was living at that time living in a little apartment house. I mean, a little basement apartment while we worked on the house and that. And when Jeff was born in September, we had it fixed enough that we could move in the house. And it was so wonderful to have a good house. The first little house we had didn't even have a bathroom in. And to me, to think we had a house with a bathroom in it.
And you have to realize that I worked full time while all this was going on, and built this house after at night.
Your dad come and helped when he could too.
Sometime. And back then you didn't hire somebody to put in your foundation and all that. You had to do that yourself, and there wasn't any farms or anything. I had to build all the farms by hand to pour the cement for the basement. It took me a long time to do that, and that was just at the time when they just started to getting cement trucks. Before that, you had to mix it yourself, and mixer and pour it in. But there was a truck that brought the cement in and poured that, and then I had to tear all the farms, all the pieces, and then you use the wood off the farms to build your house, the rest of your house. It took me a long time to get the basement in.
I think they started the build in December, and the house was moved in September, the next September.
Oh, it wasn't that soon, was it?
Yes. It was in December when you started the building on the house.
Anyway, I just worked night and day, that was all. You know, maybe young people could learn a little bit from this. I don't see that anymore. I'm sorry to say that, but I don't see people putting forth that much effort to get a house and to get ahead and to make a living, and they just borrow it.
And then when we were married, about the time Lisa was born, then his guy he worked with, before she was born, the Rasmussens that he worked with didn't have any work, so we had no place to work. So we decided to rent our house and go up to Washington to help build the atomic bomb plant up there. The atomic plant, not atomic bomb.
Yeah, it is.
It wasn't called a bomb, though.
No, that's where they made the...
In Richland, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 2 little kids, and I was just starting out with Lisa. And we still had that 38 shift car. We hauled everything we could in that car. Put the kids in the back seat on top of all the other stuff, and we headed for Washington. And we had just a happy time going up there, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that morning we was going to leave, his mother had us come down and have breakfast at her house. And his dad was there, and his dad was just crying. He didn't want Merrill to go. He was just crying. He said, something's going to happen to him. We get up there, and we have no place to stay, so I had 2 brothers up there that had trailer houses, and we stayed with them for a while till we could get ourselves a trailer house. And we got an old beat-up trailer house, and I can't remember what we paid for it. It was hardly any money, though. I think we had to send down to your parents and ask them if they'd lend us some money to buy that, and they did.
I don't remember.
And it was a wreck when all the rest of them lived in a great big trailer park with huge all over, and ours was just probably the worst one of all. And we painted it all, and we all fixed it up, and we built cupboards in it. He did all this stuff with it. And there we lived up there in Washington. We went to church all the time up there in Washington too. And he was working and when they finished the plant where he was working, we thought we'd come home because we had a house waiting for us. We didn't know whether to stay or go, because they said that people up there want us to stay in Washington. They needed us bad. And said, if you come up here, you could get a good job here for General Electric, who would run that place, right?
Yeah.
And we decided we was so homesick, and going to have this little baby. We wanted to come home. But Merrill had to stay up there for 2 weeks, and so I drove. By the way, we bought another car when we was up there, so we had 2 cars. And I drove the other car all the way home with the 2 kids in, and left him in Washington. And we had to stay in a motel one night, and then we rode all the rest of the way home. And we were so happy to get home to our house, and how the Rednose had moved out then. We had this new house to move into. It was much better than that little trailer we had. And then Lisa was born after we came home. Each one of these kids, their whole story of their birth and everything is so much dear, is so much to us, means so much to us. And it was always Marilee and Jeff, and then pretty soon we had Lisa, and then it was Marilee, Jeff, and Lisa. Then a while we had Thane, then it was still Marilee and Jeff, but we still hooked Lisa to Thane. And then there was Chad and Aaron, so our family, we divided them up, 6 of them. But I really think the most important thing of all was raising the family, and we still had our kids when we couldn't even afford to have kids. I tell you, when we had Chad, and we was running our own business then, we got, how much a week? It was
$300
$300
a month.
$300 a month. And so we was having Chad, and it was hard to even to realize that you could have a baby when you only had that much money. But we did it. We wanted to keep having our kids. We've always been active and interested, cared about the church, and tried to teach our children. I remember when we got married in the temple that day, the guy who married us said, "When you go home tonight, have a prayer together." And so that's what we did. We knelt down from then, and we hardly ever missed having prayers together. But I must say there's a couple of times when I was mad and honoring, I wouldn't have prayer with him. And it doesn't matter to tell you, because it happened a few years ago here, and so I was mad at him, so I'm going to sleep in that room. So I get up and go in the other bedroom. And all the time there I'm thinking you should go in and tell him you're sorry. You should go tell him you're sorry. But I'm not going to, because it's not my fault. But I finally got up and went to the door, and as I opened the door, we banged into each other. He had come the very same time to come and tell me he was sorry too. So we try not to ever go to bed when you're mad at each other. Marilee was born in October of 1950, and she was such a wonderful baby. And she had lots of blonde hair, just a whole big bunch of blonde hair. And we kind of thought, I don't know if he did, in my mind I wanted to have babies every 2 years. But anyhow, that's how it turned out too for a while. We had Marilee, then in September of 1952 we had Jeff, and he was a beautiful baby, absolutely beautiful, big dark eyes and olive skin. He was just a beautiful baby, and Marilee just loved him. She never had to get used to Sharon. She loved him from the beginning. She wasn't jealous of him ever, and she took him over as he get a little older, and he had to always do what she said. She ruled around. Then we had your mother, I remember when we brought her home from the hospital, Grandpa Yule was there, and he said, "She looks she's such a little squirt." And he named her Squirt. And that was Grandpa Yule did that. And Merrill still calls her Squirt today. Marilee was called, almost our kids always kind of had nicknames. Marilee was Marilee Pearly for a while. I don't know what else you called her. Marilee something.
I don't know.
She was named Merrill Lee after her father, Merrill. Jeff was named Jeffrey, and Jeffrey Ray after his grandpa, Ewell. And Lisa, we picked Lisa. It was a name that, an old-fashioned name at that time, and nobody used it. And all of a sudden, as soon as we said it, everybody in Pleasant Grove picked Lisa. So she was called Lisa. And Lisa was a tiny little girl with kind of auburn hair when she was born, and kind of curly hair. She was just a beautiful little baby. And think about these little kids too, these 3 little kids, the first 3, you could take them to church, well, not for sure, Merle used to run around a lot, but Jeff and Merle Jeff and Lisa would sit there on your lap and they would never make a noise.
When we was first married, we lived in American Fork in that little house, and we went to church up in the Tabernacle there on Main Street, and I remember, man, you couldn't hang on to Marilee. She got away from us, and I remember, and we didn't know where she went. That was a big old building.
We were sitting in the back, and he kept saying, you go get her,
go get her.
And he would not get up.
We was both too embarrassed to get up and go try and find her. And we just sat there, and pretty soon sacrament meeting was going on, and we heard this bong, bong, bong,
on the
bing,
piano.
bong, bong, bong.
On the baby grand piano.
She's up playing the piano. I think I had to go
You
get
did
her.
go get her. And then what? We never got to stay. We went
Oh,
right out and went home. We were so embarrassed. Another thing we was really embarrassed about the time that we was in church and Jeff threw his bottle.
Yeah.
He had glass bottles then. He had his big bottle of milk, you know, and he was sitting on my lap, and we were in the recreation hall in class.
Went to Sunday school class or something.
And he just went through that
and
bottle
he threw it and it went
right over everybody and smashed all over
lit on the floor
and broke open.
and busted in 1,000 pieces, and the milk and everything went all over the floor. And talk about embarrassed.
You had to get out and clean all
I
that
had
up.
to get up and go find somebody where the janitor's closet was and try and find some mops and brooms, and while the guy's up there teaching Sunday school, I'm cleaning the floor. Jeez. And he wasn't ordinarily like that. I don't know how come he did that at that time. I can't never figure that out.
I forgot to tell you, Jeff was born in September the 7th. Lisa was supposed to be born. She didn't come when we thought she was going to come, or else she's supposed to come later. I can't remember what it was. Because I came home from Washington and seen she's going to be born. I came home, I think, in September, in the very end of September, in October maybe it was. I mixed up. We came home in October. And she was born in, what's her birthday, the 23rd?
26.
26th, yeah. And it was the day after Thanksgiving.
Of 54, isn't it?
So then, our next child to be born was Thane, and he was, I got really sick when he was born. I mean, I was carrying him and almost lost him. And the doctors, I had to go into the hospital, and the doctors said they thought that the baby was dead. And they do what do you call it?
An ultrasound?
No, when you take, they thought it was going to be dead. So they didn't have ultrasounds at all, nothing, they don't know. They couldn't hear his heart beat, and he was about three months along, and they couldn't hear it. They thought he was gone. But the doctor said, well, let's wait till tomorrow to do it. And the next day, he said, well, why don't we just send you home and see? And so one day, a few weeks after I go to the doctor, I says, that baby's alive. He's growing. I know he's growing. You better find that heartbeat, you know. And I guess he was born the next June. He was overdue. He was huge. He weighed 9 pounds. I think about 9 pounds. It was such a joy for us because we worried that maybe we wouldn't even have him. And by this time, Merrill was running his business, and we had that.
Wait a minute. And the doctor said when he was born, he said to us, "Now isn't it look at this great big beautiful boy you got, and isn't it a great thing that we never took him and we waited?"
We was running our bedding plant business, which we had along with his other business. And I went to the doctor down to the doctor to see how I was doing, and he said, "We've got a new shot here. Since I was overdue, we'll give you this shot and we make you go into labor." It was the first time they used that stuff, and he gave me such a big shot. And I leaned over his desk like that, and I was in labor right then. And he ran and he grabbed his keys and said, "Go get in my car." He never helped me out the car or nothing, and I went out and got in his car. The doctor drove from it was in Pleasant Grove, and he drove over here and never stopped at a stop sign or nothing, going like mad. And he goes right by Merrill's, and before I left, I called Merrill's business and said, "We're coming to the hospital to meet us." And as we go right by Merrill, just going in to wash his hands, I seen him as we go by. And we go up to the hospital, and the doctor says, "I got to get in there." And he left me in the car to get out myself. And he goes running down the hall, saying this baby's going to be born. And the baby was only born, I guess he was born about 25 minutes from when I had the shot. It'd been really dangerous in those days. That they don't do that, give them that much powerful shots now. Anyway, when Merrill came up there, here he still had his coveralls on from working in the flower business there. But they won't let you come. They never let you come and see your kids be born until. Did you get to look in the window and watch Thane be born? Anyway, you never got to see him. Only the last 2 kids he could come in and watch him be
The
born.
last one.
You come in there with Chad. Yes, you was too.
Outside, I'd stand outside.
You came in there and stood by me while you talked.
No.
You talked about the ball game.
That was after the baby was born. He came out and said that.
Oh, maybe so. Okay, we got 2 more kids to do. Thane was born on the 2nd of June, 1958, I think. Yeah. Now here we had 4 kids. And then when I remember I was 31 when that's my 5th one, I had my 5th baby. And that was Chad. We're living up there in Manila. No, we wasn't. We still live in Pleasant Grove.
Yeah.
And that's the night you wanted to go to the ball game with the neighbor. And Chad was born early. He was a little baby. And I'd went down to see the doctor that day, and he says, "Oh, 2 weeks or more, you got plenty of time, a long time." I walk out of the office, go down to walk in the grocery store, and I had started having labor right then. So I hurried up and got all the groceries, got them in the car. We had a green Rambler station wagon, and took them home, and we got it all in the house, and I got dinner ready. And I just couldn't stand anymore, so he called the doctor and said, he says, "Well, so I want to go to the ball game," he says. The doctor says.
His kid played on the ball team, and I think Jeff did too, didn't he? Or
Not right then, though.
wasn't it?
Jeff wasn't that old then.
Well, his boy was. So.
Yeah. He said, "I want to go to the ball game." He says, "Just meet me over to the hospital." So we went in there, and we wait.
No, I went to the ball game, didn't I?
No, you were going to go, and I called the neighbor, and I said, "Merrill's not going." He says, "Why?" And I said, "'Cause I'm going to have a baby." I was so mad at him. I said, "He's got to take me to the hospital." And so we went in, and the doctor came. He never comes. And I was up there about to have him finally. Here comes the doctor down the hall. He's talking all about the ball game.
He went to the wall.
Yeah, and he's telling you all about it, and I just want to scream, I'm hurting! Stop talking, I'm hurting! Because, see, in those days you never had anything. Almost all my kids was born without having anything. You know, they was born fast and that, so you didn't have time to get...
No, they wasn't all fast.
Okay, well, I never had...
Oh, they give you a little bit of shot or something.
Most of the time.
So, well, we'll give you a shot or something,
And I'd tell
and
him,
they'd give her something,
wouldn't even work.
and she'd say, "You didn't give me anything. I gotta have some more. It didn't do any good."
Never did. But anyway, then Chad was born, and he was one of the hardest kids I had. To hurt so bad to have him. I don't know why he was stuck, and the doctor decided to go up there with and pull him out. And it hurt so bad. I said, stop it, that's killing me. Get that out of here. Stop it. And I wouldn't let him pull the baby out. And so he had to just be born as he was born. What joy he was. He was such a sweet little baby and beautiful little boy. And he was going to be named Allison, and so was Thane. But we ended up naming Chad Merrill, and he was so small. I had a little baby Bundy, a little baby basket for a dolly, and we put him in this little dolly basket, carried him around.
I got something that we passed up Thane, but I can remember we had Thane in a crib in this bedroom, and one morning I got up.
We had all those kids in bed in the same room.
And went in there, and he had both of my shoes in bed with him.
He'd get up in the night and wander around the house.
And I don't know whether he liked me or what, but he had great big work shoes in bed with him.
And then you'd go in the night. You could hear a motor going, and he'd be up and he's playing his trucks in the middle of the night going around. And he's saying he has night mixed up for day still.
He does.
That happened when he's a baby. He would do that, but he got so bad that when climbing out of his bed that I tied his foot to the bed. And the other kids were sleeping in the same room, and I found out many years later Mary Lisa always got up and untied him. She felt that was so cruel.
That was Thane, right? that you were
Yeah.
just talking about? Okay.
And Chad.
Then Chad was next.
No, we told about Chad.
I know, but we never told him about Chad being scalded.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
We had, with every one of our kids, we had some things that really happened to almost all of them. Either got cut bad or they got hurt or broken arms or whatever. And Chad probably was the worst of all, and he was 1.5 years old. And he was in the bathtub with Thane. Thane was 5, and they were taking a bath. We had just got a dishwasher, new dishwasher or something. And so we turned the heat up on the water heater high.
Because they said
to do it.
They said them first dishwashers, you had to have the water
60, wasn't it?
160 degrees for them to work right. And so that's why we had the water heater. That's as hot as it would heat.
So Merrill was down in the basement with the other kids watching TV, because we just barely got to have a new TV. We had a black and white TV. And Saturday night was their wonderful things to watch down there then. And I was upstairs helping these kids get their bath. And they started splashing all over in the bathroom. So I walked outside and got the mop stick and walked back in. And I remember thinking, I could hear him crying. And as I come with the mop stick and dropped it, I come in there. There was really terrible screaming. I run to the bathroom, and Chad had felt the water was hot as can be and coming right out down on Chad's shoulder.
Yeah, but let's talk about why. What happened? you went out to get the mop stick and the water was filling the bathtub, right?
And Chad
And
got
you
up
had
there.
it on the right temperature, and Chad stood up and turned the cold water off. And so it went straight to hot. And then he slipped and fell, and the water hit him on the shoulder right here, on the neck and shoulder. And it just cooked him.
Clear down to here.
Clear around his back and all over here.
And Thane jumped up. He was in the tub with him and grabbed him out under the water. And I reached in and picked him up with my hands. And as I picked his little naked body up, my hands prints just come right off his skin.
The skin come right off from him.
Off in my hands when I picked him up. It was the most. And Aaron, Thane jumped out of the tub, and I ran, hauled to Merrill to come up, and I ran to the telephone and called the hospital. And they want to know how bad he's hurt, and they didn't have emergency room then at the hospital, and they didn't know what this, and they don't want that. I couldn't get a doctor anywhere, so we just grabbed a baby blanket and wrapped him up in the baby blanket and ran in the car and took him to the hospital. And by the time we got there and we laid him down there, his skin was just gone.
It was hanging in threads.
And he took scissors and he just cut all his skin off him like that was hanging, you know. And he wrapped him up and he said, take him to your doctor tomorrow. He's pretty good. He's not going to be too bad. The kid almost could have died. And so we took him home. And then I called our own doctor, got a hold of him, and he says, well, I'll see you on Monday, because the other doctor said he's okay. He's not burned very
It was
bad.
on a Sunday, wasn't it?
No, that's the time he went in. He got burned on a Saturday. And so that Saturday night, he went in convulsions, and he was just terrible sick. And so I called the doctor, and as soon as it was towards morning, Merrill was at church, and I sent Jeff. He went down to church with the kids, and I called down there to Merrill's mother, who lives close to the church, tell her to go get him, bring Merrill home, for Merrill to come home. And they come running all the way home, because they'd walked to church. And we took him down to see our doctor then, and he undid his bandage, and he says, this kid's, he's burned terrible. He called the primary children's hospital, and we was up there was it on a Saturday morning, or I don't know, but we went right to the primary children's hospital.
But he said, if it was my kid, I'd have him up to the primary children's hospital as fast as I could get him there. It was terrible, wasn't it? That poor little kid was suffering bad. Anyway, we put him in there, and he had about every other day or every third day they had to operate on him, and they would take the bandages off and take the dead skin off and the flesh
Scrape
off.
him. They would scrape him.
And that went on for a long, long time, and the little kid got so despondent that you couldn't get a smile out of him, or you couldn't get him to talk or say a word or anything. He was like he was dead.
They wouldn't let us stay with him overnight. So we had to leave him every night and go home.
Yeah. And the food they would bring him up there to eat, this poor little sick kid he was starving to death. The food wasn't any good anyway, and being sick and everything, it wasn't anything he liked.
So, so one day I go in there and they come and here his food was a big gob of spinach with an egg on, kind of raw egg, and that was his lunch. And I was so upset I couldn't stand it, and I got him up in my arms, and they said, where are you going? I said, I'm going down to the lunchroom. I'm going to buy this kid some food. And they said, oh, he can't leave here. He can't leave here. And I had him in my arms going down the hall. And so they stopped, and they did stop me, and then they brought some food he would like. I remember
then
you brought big old peaches up there for him, remember?
I said, well, that kid is never going to have to go without eating if I have anything to do with it. So every time I went up there, I bought him a hamburger.
But the reason that they wasn't feeding him then was every day they had him down that he had surgery. Then that day before he couldn't eat, and he couldn't eat after. And I kept saying, it's not really surgery. They're just scraping his body. He's still starving.
But they put him out, and I guess that's why they had to have something to do with not eating. I don't know.
That was a very happy day, the day we brought him home. I have a picture of him when he's in the hospital, and his arms all wrapped up. And when we brought him home, he was a happy boy. We always called him Chatterbox, and what's the other word we always called for Chad?
Chadwick.
Smiley and everything. He was a
Yeah.
happy little boy. And the day we brought him home, my mother and dad came over there, and we have a picture of mother and dad holding him in their arms. I remember when he went in the hospital, we didn't have any health insurance at all, and he didn't have any savings.
Oh, we had little savings.
I don't think we even had $200 or $300. All we had.
Yeah, we did. Because we had enough money to pay for the hospital
We got it.
and the doctor.
We got it from. How did we get that?
I don't know, but before, while he was still in the hospital, White, this doctor down here had called. He said, and I would have this certain guy who's the best doctor there is about burns up there, look at him. And so he treated him and everything, and he finally told us one day he didn't think he was going to live.
He said there's a big chance because his kidneys he'd lost so much fluid when he was burned that it was caused his kidneys to close down and everything.
And he thought there was a great chance that he wasn't. He just told us that. Wow, about broke our hearts. But we went on with the thing, and he was in there. Well, it was a month or a little more, I don't know.
Maybe 6 weeks.
He was in there for a month, and he continued to do pretty good.
How old was he?
2.5.
I thought you said 18 months.
2.5. He was 2.5 years old.
And that doctor finally told us, well, without a doubt, he's going to have plastic surgery,
Skin grafts and that.
skin grafts and that to fix
Probably
him.
all winter, he said. He'll be up
To
here.
fix him. And he said, but look, we'll just let it go and see what happens. And he never did have to have one. He got better, and he had this huge scar right here. And somehow,
Because he was burnt clear to the muscle here.
this was third degree burns here. This wasn't just skin. This was clear in. And they said that as he grows in that way, the scar don't grow or something. And it's right here where he moves his arm and all that, and it'll cause a problem. They'll have to keep adding to it or something and everything, but that never happened. He never ever had to, and fine. We were sure grateful for that. And anyway, I was going to tell you, he was in there a month or 6 weeks in the primary children's hospital. And when we got the bill, it was $1,000. And anyway, we had the money, we paid it. And you compare that to today, and it's just shocking.
How much was the doctor's?
I can't remember
about
what.
500, I think.
I can't remember what the doctor
And we
was.
talked with the doctor, and we said, we were thanking him for taking care of him, and he says, I didn't do it. The Lord did that. I just watched over him. He said, Lord bless that, healed that little boy for you. He was a good man, wasn't he?
Okay, get Aaron born and we'll get this one.
Well, we both talked about, maybe I'm saying this wrong. After we had Thane, and then we want another baby in a couple of years. I mean, after Chad, I guess it was. And then when Chad got burnt, we put off having Aaron. So there's 4 years between them. Because I thought we'd have to be up at the hospital a lot with him. And we're so happy to get Aaron. And Aaron was just a beautiful baby, just absolutely beautiful baby. He was overdue baby, and he was almost 10 pounds, about 10 pounds, I think. He was born in February the 1st.
Yeah, but the problem was she thought she was going to have him in November.
I told you that is, you quit telling that story.
Well, it's a true story. What do you want me to tell?
It was all wrong though, so why should we tell it like it was really true?
I'm just telling you what went on. It was going to have this baby in November. And it just went on and on and on and on. And I decided we wasn't going to have a baby.
You know how bigger I was, he didn't think he was going to have it.
I gave up. And
Well, anyhow, I don't know how come, but the doctor thought that's going to be born then. And then he
it was the doctor that got fouled up or something. I don't know.
And so when it was December, then the doctor decided to take me in there and start having that baby so we can get a tax deduction. Because he's overdue anyway, he says. So I go down there, and the doctor starts me in labor, and I go through all of this, and didn't happen, so I had to come home and didn't.
Boy, she suffered though.
But I said, no doctor's ever going to do that to me again. I'll wait till this baby's ready.
Labor pains and for I don't know how many hours there, just like she was having a baby, but she never had no baby.
So the baby ended up being born on February the 1st. By the way, Chad was born February 8th on his birthday. And we were just building a new house. And Merrill had been up there working on that all winter. And that night I said, you shouldn't go up there because I feel like it's going to have the baby sooner or something. I mean, this baby you shouldn't even dare leave the house because I'm going to have this baby. Oh, it'll be okay.
Well, geez,
It will be okay. He goes and leaves me there, and he goes up, which is up to Manila where the new house is being built. There's no phone or nothing up there. And so I had to call a neighbor across the street and says, you got to go find Merrill. I got to go to the hospital. This baby's going to be born. So Jack goes up and gets him and brings him back, and we go down there, and it seemed like he was born really fast, wasn't he?
Not fast enough. You suffered more with the last one than you did any of them.
No, I was crying harder.
I don't know what it was, but she'd had enough of having babies, I know that.
No, I don't think it. No, I wasn't. Because when we got in...
at that time.
When we got in there, and he's born, because I really thought he'd maybe be a girl, and I didn't get a girl, I said to the doctor, oh, now I got to have one more to get that girl.
And he was going to be Allison, too.
Yeah,
So guess what?
he named his daughter Allison.
That's how we got her.
Oh, darn.
That was a joyful time. We bring him home about in February, and we moved into our new house the next June. And that was really fun because I think that was one of the happiest times. Maybe I can't say happiest, but one of the joyfulest time of our life is all of our kids were home then. Aaron was the baby and everybody else was home. Nobody got married yet, and there was our family together. And then pretty soon it's not that way no more. They begin to get married and gone, and it's all gone.
Missions.
That's life, huh?
That's progress.
Well,
And so here we are, huh?
Didn't say much about Aaron though.
Well, do you want to say some more about Aaron?
What about Aaron?
He wouldn't go to school.
We don't need to tell.
Oh.
He had a hard time. He had a hard time leaving the home. He didn't want to go to school. That was hard.
And guess what? He's got some kids like that too.
But what a joy he's brought to our life. Our last child too. Having all these little, he's having our last kids, last grandkids. But that isn't all of it. All the joy that comes to our life because our children had a lot of children. That's just been joyful to us.
It's almost funner watching our grandkids grow up than it was our own kids.
Mm-hmm.
It seems I can't explain the difference in it, but I think it has something to do with I had to go to work back then, and that was a big part of my life, and now I can just focus on the grandkids.
And now the great grandkids too.
Now the great grandkids, yeah. And watching them grow up, and that's the greatest thing in life.